work, iterative, that means a little bit at a time, growing, becoming more stronger, not all at once, teaspoon by teaspoon, the iterative work of caring for the divine spark that is our inherited gloriousness. Beloved, we know, because we've been talking about it for years, that the world's empires need our submission and uses the evils of trans and homophobia, the evils of racism, the evils of capitalism, misogyny, power, and various other means to empty us of ourselves. It's like a strip mining of the matrix that is us and our community. We see it all the time. We have seen folks of Asian descent, old ladies being pushed down to the ground by white men. We have seen the evils of concentrated poverty, the parking lots, and the housing projects of our very own beloved Boston and Jamaica Plain. The places where the Irish were put when they first came, they had been subject to British oppression, replaced by Black folks, the descendants of the enslaved. And it is like strip mining of our people. We have seen the suicide rates of our trans and queer kids. And we have seen the ill care of our children that causes them to be in so much pain in these days. And our parents acting heroically to care for them without keeping them from being who God made them to be. Arthur Riley, if you read this book, you will see how it is that this is really her sermon and your sermon, community built, as Sari says. Arthur Riley says, what does evil have to gain in tricking us into believing that we are anything less than glorious? She says, I would venture to guess that it swallows our belonging first. After all, a person does not wish to be seen if they believe they are ugly, and I add, or imperfect, or unaccomplished. We hide our faces, she says, and settle down in the treacherous place of nowhere. It then colonizes our body, knowing that we'll flee from it out of deep shame and embarrassment. And self-hatred opens the door and moves on in. And it makes a mockery of our limbs, twisting and contorting them for its own means. And lastly, Arthur Riley says, I believe it steals our love, for who can accept love that do not believe exists for them? Those who believe love is a scarcity are prone to give it away freely. Dignity is the inner work of caring for the divine spark that is our inherited gloriousness. Arthur Riley also writes, to steal place and dignity has less to do with power than hatred. How much must one hate oneself and one's life and one's own land to run around chasing everyone else's land, property, dignity, riches? I used to think, she says, colonization was about ego, and maybe it is, but maybe that's the oppressors think that they're worthy of more, but they believe their present self is, in fact, worthless. Colonization is the work of people incapable of perceiving their dignity without attempting to diminish someone else's. It is no surprise to me that these same powers in the end care so little for the land and the people they are desperate to conquer. It was never about love or curiosity or care, but a violent act of self-soothing. So it was for my missionary ancestors. And your fathers and mothers who were not hedgehogs, hedge fund managers. And the renters of other people's land. Dignity is the iterative work of caring for the divine spark that is inherent to our gloriousness. In the beginning, God made a human and then another human preparing a place for them for their dignity. And then evil came along and said, I'm going to tempt you out of your dignity. Here's something you're not quite prepared for. And when they found, in fact, that they accepted a gift larger than they knew that they could handle with their dignity, once they had given themselves to evil, God said, I'm sorry, you'll have to leave this garden here, but I will make clothes for you. That might be me. It's not. I will make clothes for you so that when you go out into the world to practice the use of your dignity, crisis by crisis, step by step, a son that kills another son, the act of having to work for food, they might in fact regain their dignity step by step. But God made them clothes to hide their shame. What a great God we serve. Dignity then is a practice to guard the glorious spark. It has been so cluttered up and ashed up with what empire has asked for us that we hardly recognize the glorious spark in us, or how, in fact, I'm going to try this. Please, David, help me. Thank you. That it takes practice after practice to learn to guard and protect the glorious spark. That is to say, when we move outside of our dignity, we see it because our parents tell us about it. Our partner tells us about it. The church member says, dear one, do you need some help? I'm going to help you until you can find the center of your glory again. And then we set out the next day to practice the glorious spark and guarding it as we run up against the people we meet in the subway or the people that we want to run over in our cars because we're in such a hurry because we didn't guard the glorious spark of our time so that we could pray before we got into our lethal weapons called cars in Boston. Dignity means knowing that you are glorious enough inside yourself to let somebody else go first in the grocery line. Dignity is knowing that whatever happens to you or whatever happens to your mother or your child, it means you have the resources inside of you to not collapse so that you can care for your beloved ones in the community. Owning your own dignity means when somebody in your congregation says, racism is killing me, you can say, I know because homophobia almost killed me. And I have learned resources to help protect myself and you. So I'll help. Now, what do you need, dear ones? Terry Steeden preached a sermon last week where he told us in about 15 different ways how we were beloved because we were made in the image of God. It was a beautiful and passionate sermon. And being made in the image of God means being made to be like Jesus, who sucked at a woman's breast. God deciding that humanity was dignified enough that God would come and be born between the legs of a woman, take nourishment from her, and the dignity of that bodily integrity. This is ours by right, this body, this hair, these teeth, these hands. God made us in her own image. In the Middle Ages, during the bubonic plague, the people of Europe made an image of Jesus on the cross with bubonic boils in the body. I don't know if that's idolatry, but I do think that it is a way of dignity. I think Jesus has COVID. I think Jesus is a lesbian. I think Jesus is a gay man. I think Jesus bleeds once a month. I think Jesus has risings and fallings and touches himself. I think Jesus has sex. I think Jesus eats and farts and belches, and that's for the teenagers. And I think that that's us too dignified. Dignity is a collective work to protect the collective spark. It may be on Saturday. We're going to hold a funeral for a woman whose name is Donna, who was killed by her son. And I don't know what that family needs. I'm going to meet them this next week, but our worship team says that they will come and hold a collective spark of dignity for a family that may not be afforded any dignity right now. It's not the first time we have done such a thing. I remember Candace and Courtney and some other of us went to be with another family. And we walked in as dignified as we could be so that that family could fall into the container that we would hold for them. Do you get me? We are not passive bystanders in this act. We're not preaching simple and shallow Christianity here. I'm not telling you simple things that you can just skate along in your life. Actually, we are being transformed, transfigured all the time. And that work relies on us all of us. Inside of this container of dignity at Hope Central Church, we're trying to build a place where everyone could test to see if their dignity might be betrayed, little bit by little bit by little bit, until such time as any one person can stand up here and be full of rage. And we will not make them little, nor will we run from them. We're building a container at Hope Central Church where no matter what glorious thing happens, we will be here to hold it for them. We're offering a place of dignity where reparations might give people an equal shot an equitable place to stand to care for their children. This is a deep and transforming Christianity that I am proposing to us. Who wants simple and shallow? You can get that on TV. Or you can play some time to rest because your dignity requires rest, fun, and touch, and food, and sex. A loving pat on the hand from the oldest member of the congregation present. This is our work. I can't believe how lucky we are to have fallen into this work.